The Hall of Measures was 900 meters of silence. Oren's mandibles clicked once, and the sound traveled further than it should have. He stood at the center of the vault, 4,200 lanterns of compressed starlight hanging above him, casting no shadows. The floor was black stone older than his species. The air tasted of ozone and calcified resin, the breath of 10,000 delegations who had come here to declare their strength. This was his 37th registration ceremony. He had conquered 13 domains. He had seen empires crumble and new ones rise. He had never seen a delegation arrive without a single weapon on display. The human delegation walked in at the hour of the third bell. There were 5 of them. They wore gray uniforms with no insignia. Their boots made soft sounds on the stone, not the heavy click of military heels. They carried nothing but a single datapad and a small canvas bag. Oren's 8 eyes tracked them as they crossed the floor. The human in front was shorter than the others, with a glass eye that reflected the lantern light like a dead moon. His left hand moved in small circles at his side, a slow, deliberate motion that Oren did not understand. The wrong detail was the stone. Oren saw it when the human passed within 10 meters, a flat gray river stone, the size of a child's palm, resting in the human's open left palm. He turned it over once, then closed his fingers around it. The stone was warm. Oren could see the faint haze of body heat rising from it in the cold air of the hall. No one brought a stone to the Hall of Measures. Oren's mandibles clicked again. His staff shifted behind him. The 4 other admirals, 1 Corvath, 1 Nethrani, 2 from lesser domains, took their places on the observation tier above. They were here to register their flagships, to add their names to the war archive, to remind the conquered that their empires still breathed. The human with the glass eye stopped at the base of the registration platform. He looked up at Oren. His face was calm, patient, like a man who had already decided what the answer would be. "Fleet Marshal Drath Oren," the human said. His voice was low, unhurried. "I am Captain Ren Vass of the Human Merchant Marine. I am here to register 5 vessels for the human conquered delegation." Oren's prosthetic claw tapped his thigh. The obsidian made a dull sound against his carapace. 5 vessels, he said. "You have never registered a single ship in 312 years. Why now?" The human did not answer. He turned his glass eye toward the ceiling, where the 5 other admirals watched from above. "Because we built them," Vass said, "and we believe the conquered should know what we built." Oren's mandibles stopped clicking. The hall was very quiet. The registration ceremony had been the same for 17,000 years. Each admiral rose, spoke the name of their flagship, and recited the metrics that proved its worth. The Corvath admiral, Thesson Vor, spoke of his dreadnought's structural integrity, how it had survived a collision with a neutron star's accretion disk. The Nethrani elder, Vera Solon, spoke of her fleet's ability to erase a system's communications grid in 3 seconds flat. The other 2 admirals gave their numbers: crew complement, lance output, kilometers per second in combat burn. Oren went last. He rose to his full height of 2.4 meters, his copper carapace gleaming in the lantern light, his 4 arms spread wide. "The unyielding weight asterisk," he said. 5,200 crew. Primary lance cracks continental plates in 7 seconds. 2,200 meters of hull forged in the heart of Kethran. I have commanded her for 341 years. She has never lost a battle." He paused. He looked down at the human delegation, still standing at the base of the platform. Vass had not moved. His left hand was still making small circles, and the stone was still in his palm. "Captain Vass," Oren said, "you have heard our numbers, now tell me yours. What do your 5 vessels carry? What weapons do they mount? What worlds have they broken?" Vass looked up at Oren. His glass eye caught the light and held it, unblinking. "Fleet Marshal," he said, We have not broken any worlds, we have not mounted any weapons. Our vessels carry no lances, no missiles, no boarding craft. They are 280 meters each. They have running lights and navigation systems. They are built to travel, not to fight. The hall erupted in murmurs. The Corvette admiral leaned forward. The Nethrani elder's skin flickered from pale blue to deep violet, a sign of confusion. Orin's mandibles clicked 3 times in rapid succession. "Then what are they?" he demanded. "Why would you register ships that carry nothing?" Vass did not answer. He turned to the clerk at the registration console and placed his datapad on the crystal surface. "I request permission to bring the 5 vessels into the hall's sensor range. They are currently in orbit around Saturn's 41st moonlet. They have been waiting for 17 years, 3 months, and 11 days. Orin stared at him. 17 years. "They are patient ships," Vass said. "They can wait longer if needed." The clerk, a young Nethrani with trembling hands, looked to Orin for approval. Orin gave a sharp nod. The clerk pressed a sequence of keys. On the central holographic display, a view of the outer system appeared. Saturn hung in the center, its rings a thin line of gold. A small moonlet drifted at the edge of the frame. And then from behind the moonlet, 5 shapes emerged. They were small, 280 meters each, less than an eighth of the unyielding weight *S length. Their hulls were weathered nickel, dull and unpolished. They had no visible weapons, no sensor arrays, no communication masts, just running lights blinking in a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. Orin felt the air leave his lungs. He had seen warships of every shape and size. He had seen dreadnoughts that could swallow moons. He had seen stealth vessels that bent light around themselves. He had never seen ships that looked like nothing at all. The sensors on the unyielding weight finest in the hegemony, swept across the 5 vessels. The data appeared on the central display. Hull composition, unknown alloy. Mass, 940,000 tons. Internal structure, undefined. Orin's prosthetic claw stopped tapping. His mandibles went still. "Clarify," he said. His voice came out flat, hollow. "What does undefined mean?" The tactical officer, a young Zethkari with nervous eyes, scrambled to rerun the scan. The result came back identical. The ships were filled with something that the Concorde's instruments could not resolve. Not empty, not solid. Something that had no category in 17,000 years of data. Orin turned to the human. Vass was still standing at the base of the platform, the stone in his hand, his glass eye reflecting the lanterns. "Captain Vass," Orin said, "what is inside your ships?" Vass looked up at him. His face was calm, unhurried, the same expression he had worn since he walked in. "Fleet Marshal," he said, "I will tell you when you are ready to hear it." The hall was silent. The 4 other admirals had risen from their seats. The Corvette admiral was running calculations on his personal slate. The Nethrani elder had closed her eyes, her skin shifting through a sequence of colors that Orin could not read. The 2 lesser admirals were whispering to each other. Orin stared at the human. He had spent 734 years learning to read other species. He had broken 13 domains by knowing exactly when to strike and when to wait. But this human, this man with a glass eye and a stone in his pocket, gave him nothing. No fear, no pride, no deception, only patience. He thought of the 312 years of human membership in the Concorde. They had never registered a ship. They had never requested a military alliance. They had never made a single claim of strength. He had always assumed they were weak, a provisional species that would eventually fade into the background of galactic politics. But these 5 ships had been waiting for 17 years. They had been built to a standard that the Concorde's instruments could not measure, and they had arrived at this exact moment, during the registration ceremony, in front of all 5 admirals. Orin looked up at the holographic display. The 5 vessels hung in orbit, motionless, their running lights blinking in that slow, patient rhythm. He realized, for the first time in his life, that he was looking at something he did not understand. He turned to the clerk. "Reboot the sensor array, run a full spectrum analysis. I want every variable." The clerk obeyed. The display flickered. A new set of figures appeared. Mass, 940,000 tons. Internal structure, undefined. Density, EXCEDSALLOWED parameters. No radiation signature, no heat signature, no gravitational anomaly. Oren felt the obsidian claw in his hand, the one that had replaced his lost arm, and he tapped it against his thigh. Once, twice, a third time. He had never tapped it more than once in a ceremony. "Captain Vass," he said, "your ships have no heat signature, no radiation. They are denser than any vessel of their size has any right to be. They are not carrying cargo. They are not carrying weapons. What are they carrying?" Vass looked at him. The stone was still in his left hand, warm, motionless. "Fleet Marshal," he said, "I told you. I will tell you when you are ready to hear it, but I will give you a hint." He paused. The hall held its breath. "The Silent Tally was chartered 312 years ago," Vass said. "The same year humanity joined the conquered. That was not a coincidence. That was a schedule." Oren's 8 eyes fixed on him. A schedule for what? Vass did not answer. He turned his back on the platform and walked toward the observation window. The other humans, the 4 in gray uniforms, followed him without a word. Vass stopped at the railing and looked out at the holographic display, where the 5 ships still hung in their patient orbit. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the stone. He held it up to the light. It was flat, gray, the size of a child's palm. 23 skip marks were visible on its surface, the count of a child's game long ago on a riverbank. He had kept it in his pocket for 11 years. It was warmer than his hand. Oren watched him. He did not understand why a captain would bring a stone to the Hall of Measures. He did not understand why the stone was warm. He did not understand why the human's left hand was still making small circles. But he understood, with a certainty that made his mandibles ache, that he had been measuring the wrong thing for 17,000 years. The first micro cliffhanger landed when Vass turned away from Oren. The question, "What is the schedule?" The second micro cliffhanger came when the scan results returned, undefined. What does that mean? The third will come at the end. What is inside the ships? Now, as the hall remained in stunned silence, Oren walked to the observation window and stood beside Vass. The human did not flinch. He did not move. He simply stared at the 5 ships, his glass eye reflecting their running lights. "You are not afraid of me," Oren said. It was not a question. "No," Vass said, "I am not afraid of you." "Why?" Vass turned his head. His real eye, the one that still worked, met Oren's gaze. "Because I have already seen what happens next," he said, "and you have not." Oren didn't move, his 8 eyes fixed on the human's glass prosthetic. "Show me," he said. Vass picked up the river stone. He held it between his thumb and forefinger, letting the lantern light pass across its flat gray surface. "We didn't use your numbers, Fleet Marshal. We used our own." "What numbers?" "Years, generations. A child's stone skipping across water. The time it takes for a river to wear a rock smooth." Oren's lower hands pressed against the console. The obsidian claw tapped once, then stopped. "That is not a number. It is the only number that matters." Thesson Vor slithered forward again. His chitin plates caught the light as he coiled around the sensor array. "Fleet Marshal, I have a request. Allow me to run a density mapping scan, not mass, structure." Oren nodded. "Do it." The adjunct's upper hands moved across the console. The screen flickered. Lines of code scrolled. Oren watched the display, watched the unyielding weight sensors shift from standard spectrum to gravitational imaging. The results came back in layers. Fleet Marshal, Thessenvor said slowly, the target vessels are not solid, they are not empty. They are nested. Nested how? Chambers inside chambers, layers of hull alloy separated by voids. The structure is, he paused, his chitin plates shivering. It's a honeycomb, Fleet Marshal, but each cell has its own density, its own internal reading. The scanner is trying to read 50,000 individual compartments, all of them undefined. Oren's upper arms unfolded from the ceremonial position. 50,000 compartments. At least, possibly more. The scanner cannot resolve them all. Vass placed the stone on the railing again. The scanner cannot resolve them, he repeated, because you are looking for weapons. You see 50,000 compartments and think 50,000 missile tubes. We see 50,000 drawers. Oren turned, his 8 eyes locked on the human. Drawers. Each one is a record, a document, a piece of evidence. The silent tally does not carry munitions, Fleet Marshal. It carries proof. Proof of what? Vass did not answer. The running lights on the 5 vessels flickered. It was not a glitch. The pattern was too deliberate. 3 steady pulses, a pause, 2 steady pulses, a longer pause. The rhythm repeated across all 5 hulls. On the unyielding weights bridge, Lieutenant Chen Oduya watched the readout. Her copper bracelet was warm against her wrist. The lights are changing, she said. Sergeant Jorah Malik touched her breast pocket. It's the sequence. What sequence? The one from the old charts, the Columbia River charts. My grandmother showed me, the way the water moved around the rocks. The pattern of the ripples. Chen looked at the data feed. That's a code. It's a signature. They're telling us they're ready. Elder Vera Solon rose from her seat in the observation gallery. Her bioluminescent skin shifted from deep violet to an almost translucent white, the color of sudden comprehension. The light pattern, she said. I recognize it. Oren turned. Explain. The human delegation filed a star chart when they joined the Concord, 312 years ago. I remembered because it was so sparse, only a few dozen systems, nothing noteworthy. But the arrangement of their running lights, she paused. It maps to their solar system, the position of their sun, the orbital paths of their planets. But it is not current. What do you mean, not current? The position of their sun in the pattern is 312 years behind its actual trajectory. The chart they filed was from the moment they arrived, not the moment they are in now. Oren's mandibles clicked. They filed a historic chart. That's meaningless. It is not meaningless, Fleet Marshal. It is a timestamp. They are telling us they have been building to a different clock. Vass watched the Neithrani elder from the observation deck. His glass eye reflected the lanterns in a way that made him look like he was staring straight through her. The Concord measures time by its own existence, he said. 17,000 years. You count your history and the number of species you have absorbed. The Zethkari count their history in the number of domains they have conquered. We count ours in the number of generations it takes to make a thing that lasts. Oren's obsidian claw tapped twice against his thigh. You are a provisional member. 312 years. You have no history. We have history, Vass said. It is just not written in your ledgers. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the stone again. My daughter counted 23 skips. That was 11 years ago. She is 18 now. She has a daughter of her own. That child will learn to skip stones on the same river, on the same beach, with the same water that wore this rock smooth. By the time she is old, the rock will be a little smoother, a little flatter, a little closer to the shape it will hold when there is nothing else left to count. He set it back down. The Zethkari hegemony has 17,000 years of war doctrine. Humanity has 312 years of silence. The silence is not absence. It is a different frequency. Oren looked away from Vass. He looked at the data screen again. The 5 vessels hung in the void, their running lights pulsing in that patient, river current pattern. "Thren," he said. "Yes, Fleet Marshal." "Run a seismic reading from the origin stone." Thren's mandibles clicked. "Fleet Marshal." "Just do it." The tactical officer's hands moved across the console. The screen shifted to a subsonic spectrum, a reading of the bedrock beneath the Hall of Measures, the stone that had been there before the Concord was founded. The reading came back. Thren's mandibles stopped clicking. "Fleet Marshal," he said, "the origin stone is vibrating." Oren stared at the screen. "Vibrating how?" "Low frequency. Subsonic. It began approximately 7 minutes ago, the same time the human vessels finished their emergence pattern." Vass looked down from the observation deck. His left hand moved in that slow, circular habit. The Hall of Measures was not built on the origin stone, Fleet Marshal. It was placed here to contain it. Oren's carapace tightened. "Contain what?" "The thing you have been measuring for 17,000 years." The vibration was not loud. It was a pressure change, a shift in the air that made the 4,200 lanterns sway almost imperceptibly. The 400 observers in the hall felt it in their bones, a hum that bypassed the ears and settled into the chest. Elder Vera Solon braced herself against the railing. Her bioluminescent skin flickered. "This resonance," she said, "it is not mechanical, it is sympathetic." Oren turned to Thesson Vor. "Translate." "The vibration frequency," the Korvath adjunct said, "matches the internal density reading of the human vessels. It is not a coincidence. The ships are transmitting to the origin stone." "Transmitting what?" Thesson Vor's serpentine body coiled tighter. "I cannot determine the content, Fleet Marshal, but the origin stone is responding." Vass spoke from the observation deck. His voice carried the same current as the river stone in his pocket. "The Hall of Measures has been asking the wrong question for 17,000 years. You have been measuring what can be destroyed. You have never measured what can be preserved." Oren's lower arms pressed against his carapace. "You are saying the ships are archives." "I am saying," Vass said, "that the ships are a mirror." "A mirror." The floor of the Hall of Measures trembled. A single, low pulse that traveled up through the 900-meter vault and made the lanterns ring like bells. "The Zethkari hegemony controls 13 domains," Vass said. "The unyielding weight has 5,200 crew and a lance that cracks continental plates. That is what you show us when you look in the mirror. That is what you see." He picked up the river stone. "What do you see when you look at us?" On the bridge of the unyielding weight, Petty Officer Findaro stopped humming. The console in front of him was blinking, a steady amber light that he had never seen before. He touched the screen. The light changed to a slow, rhythmic green. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, "the vessels are transmitting to the origin stone, but it's not data." Chen moved to a station. "What is it?" "It's a key, a handshake. They're matching the resonance of the bedrock." Sergeant Jorah Malik touched the folded map in her breast pocket. "The Columbia River," she said quietly. "The water shaped the rock. It took thousands of years. We didn't build these ships in 312 years. We built the design in 312 years. The ships were waiting." "Waiting for what?" Chen asked. Jorah looked at the screen. "For the hall to ask the right question." The Hall of Measures trembled again. The vibration was stronger now, a deep, resonant hum that made the crystal railing sing. The 4,200 lanterns swayed in unison, their compressed starlight flickering like candle flame. Oren's 8 eyes fixed on Vass. "What are they doing?" "Fleet Marshal," the human said, "the Concord has spent 17,000 years measuring power by the volume of fire it can produce. The Zethkari have spent 734 years conquering domains. You have never met a species that built for the moment after victory." The floor beneath them shifted, a slow, grinding motion that made the observers grab for handrails. "We built for that moment," Vass said. "We built for the moment when your measurements stop mattering. The moment when you look at our ships and realize you have no category for what you are seeing." The river stone sat on the railing. It did not roll. It had been sitting there for 11 years of wearing smooth against a man's hip, and now it was sitting in the center of a 17,000-year-old vault, and it was not moving. "The silent tally was chartered the year we arrived," Vass said. "We have been building for this moment, not for war, for the end of war. The moment when the last admiral looks at the last weapon and sees it for what it is." Oren's mandibles clicked. "A weapon is a weapon." "No," Vass said. "A weapon is a statement, and we have a different statement." The stone vibrated. It was a small thing, a tiny tremor that traveled up through the railing and into Vass's palm. He looked down at the gray flat shape, the 23 skip marks his daughter had counted, the millions of years of riverware that had brought it to this shape. "The Hall of Measures," he said, "was built to register strength. You have 6,400 species in your ledgers. You have 17,000 years of battle records. You have 13 domains and a fleet that cracks worlds." He set the stone flat on the railing. "5 admirals looked up," he said. "One of them understood, none of them slept." The floor of the Hall of Measures split. It was not a crack. It was a seam, a hairline fracture that ran the length of the vault, following a pattern that had been carved into the origin stone before the Concord was founded. The seam glowed with a warm, amber light. Thessenvor's chitin plates shivered. "The origin stone is not a foundation," he said. "It is a seal." Oren stared at the glowing seam. "A seal for what?" Vass looked down. His glass eye reflected the amber light. "For the question you have not asked." The 5 vessels outside the hall began to pulse, their running lights accelerating to a steady rhythm that matched the heartbeat of the origin stone. "The galaxy asked for our weapons," Vass said. "We showed them our weight." The seam in the floor widened. The amber light rose through the vault, illuminating the 4,200 lanterns from below. "The weight is here, Fleet Marshal. It has been here since before you built your first warship. The Concord was built to measure strength. The origin stone was placed to hide what strength actually is." Vass stepped back from the railing. "The silent tally is not carrying weapons. It is carrying the answer to a question you have not asked." Oren's 8 eyes fixed on the human's face, on the prosthetic eye that reflected nothing, the mouth that had not stopped speaking, the hand that had not stopped moving in circles. "What is the question?" Oren asked. Vass looked at the glowing seam in the floor. The amber light rose around him. "Where does power go," he said, "when it has nothing left to conquer?" The stone on the railing trembled. It did not fall. It sat where Vass had placed it, flat gray and patient, holding the memory of a river that no longer existed. Outside the hall, the 5 vessels began to shift. Not moving, not attacking, not retreating. They simply reoriented, a slow rotation that aligned their hulls with the glowing seam in the origin stone. The amber light from the floor met the running lights of the ships, and the Hall of Measures began to open. The amber light rose through the seam, and the floor of the Hall of Measures did not crack, it folded. The stone parted along lines no one had seen, lines carved before the Concord was built, before the Zethkari first crawled from their methane swamps. The folding was slow, deliberate, like the opening of a book that had been closed for millions of years. Oren stepped back, his lower arms braced against the console. His obsidian claw tapped once, twice, then stopped. "Thren," he said, "what is below us?" The tactical officer's mandibles clicked faster than Oren had ever heard. "Fleet Marshal, the origin stone is not solid. It is a cap. Beneath it is a void, approximately 800 meters deep, the same diameter as the hall above." Thesson Vor slithered to the edge of the opening. His serpentine lower body coiled against the crystal railing as he peered down. The amber light from below illuminated his chitin plates, casting long shadows. "Fleet Marshal," he said, "there is something in the void." Orin moved to the railing. His 8 eyes adjusted to the amber glow. Below, in the depths of the origin stone, shapes began to resolve, not structures, not machinery, but something older. "Are those," Orin began. "Chambers," Thesson Vor said. "Nested chambers, the same honeycomb structure as the human vessels, but these are filled with something. I can see it from here." Orin looked up at Vass. The human had not moved from the observation deck. His hand still rested beside the river stone. "Captain Vass," Orin said, "you will tell me what is in that void." Vass spoke without looking down. "It is the reason we came, Fleet Marshal. It is the thing we have been waiting for you to find." The folding stopped. The Hall of Measures now had a second level, a great well of amber light that descended into the heart of the origin stone. The 4,200 lanterns above cast their compressed starlight into the void, but the amber glow from below overpowered them. Thesson Vor activated a portable scanner. His upper hands moved quickly across the console, his chitin plates rattling with urgency. "Fleet Marshal, the chambers below are not empty. They contain," he paused, "they contain records, not text, not images, something else. Vibrational patterns, the same frequency as the human running lights." Orin's mandibles clicked. "Records of what?" Vass answered from above. "The Conquered has 17,000 years of war doctrine. You have recorded every battle, every victory, every conquest. But you have never recorded what you could not conquer." The amber light pulsed. "What you could not conquer," Vass continued, "is what you could not classify, the species that refused to fight, the civilizations that did not build weapons, the knowledge that could not be destroyed because it was not a thing." Orin's lower arms pressed against his carapace. "You are saying the origin stone contains the record of every species that refused to be measured." "I am saying," Vass said, "that the origin stone is the memory of everything your institution declared undefined." Chen Oduya watched the data feed from the unyielding weights bridge. The amber light from the origin stone was registering as a low-frequency harmonic, a wave that traveled through the bedrock and into the hulls of the 5 human vessels. The running lights on the asterisk sent one had synchronized with the pulse. "Jorah," she said, "the ships are resonating with the origin stone. They're not transmitting, they're receiving." Sergeant Jorah Malik touched the folded map in her breast pocket. "They've been waiting for this signal for 312 years. "The signal from the origin stone." "No. The signal from us. The hall was built to contain the stone. The stone was placed to hide the truth. The truth is," she paused, "the truth is that the Conquered's definition of power was incomplete. The origin stone is the missing half. The humans didn't build ships to carry weapons. They built ships to carry the question the Conquered never asked." Chen stared at the data feed. "What question?" Jorah pulled out the map, the paper chart of the Columbia River, hand-drawn, marked with 23 small circles. "Where does power go when it has nothing left to conquer?" Orin descended into the void. He walked down the ramp that had folded from the floor, a ramp that had been there all along, hidden in the pattern of the origin stone. His 8 eyes adjusted to the amber glow, his obsidian claw tapping against the stone surface. Thesson Vor followed, his serpentine body moving in smooth coils. Elder Vera Solon descended behind them, her bioluminescent skin shifting to a deep, steady violet. The chamber below was vast, 800 meters across, the same diameter as the hall above. But where the hall was filled with lanterns and observers, this chamber was filled with shelves. Thousands of shelves, carved into the stone, each one holding a single object. Oren stopped at the nearest shelf, his 8 eyes focused on the object. It was a stone, flat gray the size of a child's palm. He reached out with his lower arm and touched it. The stone was warm. Fleet Marshal, Thessenvor said, every shelf holds a stone, thousands of them. Each one is different, different color, different texture, different origin, but they all share the same shape. Oren turned, the same shape as Vass's stone. Almost identical, Fleet Marshal. They are river stones, worn smooth by water, millions of years of erosion. Vass's voice echoed from above, carrying through the amber-lit chamber. Each one is a record, Fleet Marshal, a memory of a species that chose not to conquer, a civilization that built to last, not to destroy. The origin stone has been holding them for 17,000 years. Oren's mandibles clicked. Why? Vass descended the ramp. His footsteps were unhurried, patient. The river stone was still in his hand. Because the conquered was founded on a lie, he said. The lie that power is measured by what you can break. The founders knew the truth, but they buried it. They built the Hall of Measures to celebrate the lie. They placed the origin stone beneath it to hide the truth. Oren's carapace tightened. You are saying the conquered's foundation is a deception. I am saying, Vass said, that the Zethkari hegemony has been measuring the wrong thing for 17,000 years. You have conquered 13 domains. You have cracked worlds, but you have never asked what happens after the cracking stops. He held up his stone. The river does not break the rock. The water wears it smooth. It takes millions of years. It is the slowest weapon ever made. Thessenvor moved through the chamber, scanning each shelf. His upper hands moved faster as the data accumulated. Fleet Marshal, he said, these stones are not identical. Each one has a distinct vibrational signature. They are records not of text or image but of meaning. The origin stone is a library of everything the conquered could not classify. Oren stared at the thousands of stones, and the human ships. The ships are carrying keys, Vass said. Keys to unlock this chamber. We have been waiting for the hall to ask the right question, the question that would open the seal. What question? Oren demanded. Vass looked at the elder Nithrani. Elder Vera, what is the oldest memory of the origin stone? Vera Solin's bioluminescent skin flickered. The oldest memory is a recording, a voice. It says, she paused, her 6 limbs trembling. It says, the stone is the question. The water is the answer. Oren's 8 eyes widened. That is the human's philosophy. No, Vera said. That is the conquered's original philosophy. The founders wrote it. Then they buried it. They built the Hall of Measures to measure strength, but the origin stone measures something else. It measures endurance. Vass nodded. Endurance is not strength, it is stronger. The 5 human vessels began to descend. They moved slowly, not with engines, but with a silent drift that brought them through the roof of the hall, through the opening in the origin stone, and into the amber-lit chamber below. The 280-meter hulls filled the vast space like ships in a cathedral. Oren watched them descend. His obsidian claw stopped tapping. Captain Vass, he said, your ships are in the Chamber of Records. The chamber that was sealed for 17,000 years. What happens now? Vass walked to the center of the chamber. The river stone was in his left hand. The ships are not here to take anything, he said. They are here to add to it. The silent tally has been recording human endurance for 312 years. Every child's stone skipped across water. Every generation that built without war. Every moment we chose to wait rather than strike. He looked up at the 5 vessels. We have been filing in a different drawer, Fleet Marshal, and now we are filing in the drawer that was always meant for us. The ship stopped their descent. They hovered in the center of the chamber, their running lights pulsing in a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of the origin stone. Thessenvor ran his scanner again. His chitin plates shivered. Fleet Marshal, the vibrational signature of the human vessels is aligning with the origin stone's ambient frequency. They are not just adding records, they are merging with the chamber. Orin turned to Vass. Your ships are bonding with the origin stone. They are completing it, Vass said. The chamber has been empty for 17,000 years, waiting for a species that understood endurance. The Zethkari never qualified. The Korvath never qualified. The Silkari, the Vrenari, the Athari, none of them built for the moment after victory. You all built for the moment of victory. He set the river stone on the floor. Humanity built for the moment when victory became meaningless. The amber light rose from the stones. The thousands of stones on the shelves began to glow, each one emitting a low pulse that traveled through the chamber and into the hulls of the 5 vessels. Orin stood in the center of the glow. His carapace reflected the amber light, turning his burnished copper into a deep gold. His 8 eyes were fixed on the stones. These records, he said, they are all from species that refused to fight. Not refused, Vass said, transcended. They understood that war is a cycle. Conquer and be conquered, build and be destroyed. They chose to build something that could not be destroyed. What did they build? Vass looked at the stones. They built what you see. They built the question that does not have an answer, the question that makes conquest irrelevant. Orin's mandibles clicked. What is the question? Vass picked up his stone again. The flat gray rock from the Columbia River, the 23 skip marks his daughter had counted. Where does power go when it has nothing left to conquer? The amber light pulsed. The ships began to hum, a low, harmonic resonance that traveled through the chamber and into the hall above. The observers in the gallery felt it in their bones, their teeth, their very cells. Elder Vera Solon closed her eyes. Her bioluminescent skin shifted to a pure, steady white. The vessels, she said softly, are not warships. They are vessels of witness. They have been watching the conquered for 312 years. They have been recording what you could not measure. Orin's lower arms trembled. Watching what? Watching you, Vass said. Watching the Zethkari conquer 13 domains. Watching the Korvath design weapons. Watching the Silkari, the Vrenari, the Athari, all of you measuring your power by the number of worlds you could break, and we kept a different count. He held up the stone. We counted the number of worlds that could be saved. We counted the years it took to make a river rock smooth. We counted the generations of children who would never see a war. The ship's resonance deepened. 5 admirals looked up, Vass said, because they never looked down. They never looked at the origin stone. They never asked what was beneath the hall of measures. They never asked where power goes. Orin's mandibles clicked in a pattern his staff had never heard, a pattern of fear, of doubt, of the first crack in a 734-year certainty. A new voice spoke. It came from the communication console on the bridge of the unyielding weight, a voice that had not spoken before in the entire ceremony. Sergeant Jorah Malik. Captain Vass, she said, her voice carrying through the hall's speakers, the final chamber is opening. Vass looked up. His glass eye reflected the amber light. Sergeant, he said, are you certain? The vibrational frequency changed 3 seconds ago. The origin stone's internal structure has shifted. There is a lower level, Captain, a level beneath the chamber of records. Orin turned to Thesson Vor. Is that accurate? The Korvath adjunct ran the scanner again. His chitin plates rattled. Fleet Marshal, there is a space beneath this chamber, approximately 200 meters deeper. It was not visible before because the density reading was undefined, just like the human vessels. Orin's 8 eyes locked on Vass. What is beneath us? Vass was silent for a long moment. His hand moved in a slow circle, the plotting habit, the Kargarut gesture. Sergeant Malik, he said, tell them what you know. Jorah's voice came through the speakers, steady and quiet. "The chart I carry, the Columbia River chart, has a second map on the back. I didn't see it until last year. It shows a pattern that matches the origin stone's lower chamber. My grandmother drew it. Her grandmother drew it. It has been passed down for 312 years." Oren's mandibles clicked. "You have a chart of this chamber." "Not just a chart, Fleet Marshal." Jorah paused. "I have the coordinates of the 24th skip." Vass smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible in the amber light. "The 23 skips were practice," he said. "The 24th was always the destination." The floor of the Chamber of Records folded again. The amber light intensified as a new opening appeared, a smaller, circular shaft that descended into darkness. The shaft was lined with a material the scanner could not identify, the same undefined alloy as the human vessels. Oren stepped toward the shaft. His obsidian prosthetic tapped a new rhythm, not impatience, not fear, but something closer to reverence. "Captain Vass," he said, "what is in that shaft?" Vass walked to the edge. He looked down into the darkness. The river stone was warm in his pocket. "Fleet Marshal," he said, "the shaft leads to the place where power goes when it has nothing left to conquer." The shaft descended into cool blue light. Oren stepped onto the final platform. His obsidian claw tapped once, the sound swallowed by silence. Below, a chamber no larger than a cargo hold held a single pedestal. On it, a river stone. Vass followed. His stone was warm in his pocket. "The original," Vass said, "placed here 25,000 years ago, before the Conquered was founded." Oren's mandibles clicked. The founders built the hall to measure strength and buried this beneath it. They buried the question that makes conquest meaningless. Vass set his copy beside the original. The stones touched. Blue light rose. Oren knelt, for the first time in 734 years. "What question?" Vass looked at the stones. "Where does power go when it has nothing left to conquer?" The light pulsed. The space between the stones opened, revealing a void within the pedestal. Vass reached in and withdrew a third stone, identical but older. "This is the original question," he said. "The answer is not a thing. It is a silence." He placed it in Oren's obsidian claw. The stone was warm. Oren stared at it. "I have conquered 13 domains. I have cracked worlds. I have." "Yes," Vass said. "And now you are holding the thing that outlasts all of that." The chamber hummed. The 5 human vessels above began to resonate, their running lights pulsing in the river current pattern. Oren rose. "What do I do with it?" Vass touched his own stone, the copy, the one his daughter had counted. "You carry it. You wait. You ask the question until you understand that the question is the only answer." The ships ascended through the hall. The 400 observers watched in silence. Elder Verasolin's skin turned gold, the color of transformation. Thessenvor approached Oren. "Fleet Marshal, the analysts want a briefing." Oren held up the stone. "Tell them the lower chamber contained a question, the question the Conquered was founded to bury." "What question?" Oren's mandibles clicked softly. "Where does power go when it has nothing left to conquer?" The adjunct was silent. "Then that is not a question. That is a statement." "Yes," Oren said, "and the Conquered has no category for it." Vass walked through the hall. The river stone was back in his pocket. Thessenvor caught up. "Captain Vass, I request transfer to the Human Liaison Corps. I want to carry the question." Vass studied him. "The question is not studied, it is carried. Are you ready to wait?" The Corveth's chitin plate stilled. "I am." Vass nodded. "Bring the map, the one with the 24th skip." "I will." On the unyielding Waits Bridge, Oren placed the original stone on the console beside his claw. Thren approached. "Fleet Marshal, the human vessels have returned to the shadow of Saturn's 41st moonlet. They're holding position. no transmissions. Oren looked at the stone. We wait. For what? Oren's 8 eyes fixed on the gray flat surface. For the moment when conquest becomes irrelevant. The 5 ships remained for 96 hours. Analysts filled 3,000 pages. None could define the internal structure. The reports all ended with the same line, undefined. No further data. Thessenvor submitted his transfer 9 days later. His journal entry that night. I have seen ships that carry war. I have never seen ships that carry the end of measurement. Vass sat in his quarters on Station Meridian 4. The window looked on empty space. He set his stone on the windowsill, the copy, the one with 23 skips. It sat there, flat and gray, warm from 11 years in his pocket. It had touched the original question. Now it rested. Vass sat down. He did not pick it up. He did not need to. The 23 skips had been practice. The 24th was here. He closed his eyes. The silence was warm. 5 admirals looked up. One of them understood. None of them slept.